Good morning, everybody.
Well,
It
that
is.
was new.
Oh, what? The video? Have you not seen that?
No, I haven't seen the animation.
Oh, that's. Oh man, I've had it for like a year and I love it.
What?
Yeah, I know. I know. I should be putting it everywhere, right? But
Yeah.
if you're okay, so if you're in digital driver's ed, um, that's like on the front and back of all of the lessons. And
Okay.
there was one mom that was like about to move on to another lesson and just cut that. And her kid was like, "No, you didn't show the thing. You got to show the guy." So he made her go back and actually watch that part of the video, which just totally made
I,
my
I
day.
I like how it groans.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, hey, it's not easy to pull up a stack. Like that's not easy.
Good
So
morning, Tim Lockie.
good morning, Tim Sarantonio. How are you, my friend?
I'm okay. Yeah,
Good.
it's a Wednesday right before Thanksgiving, and then you got Giving Tuesday after that. So there's just a lot going on, but
You're
thrilled to be here
in the funnel. In the funnel.
in the funnel.
Yeah. So
So
when
what
you're
are we
when you're
talking
in the
about here?
funnel, you make funnel cakes. I
Yeah.
feel like that's what we should start saying. Okay, I want to tell you about. I might show this to you, but I want to tell you about a workshop that I'm doing and the tool that I'm giving away at the workshop.
Okay.
The workshop is promoting digital driver's ed. You have been along for the ride on this one, man.
Mhm.
Like you have just watched me like pull this thing up the hill,
Yeah.
like the little engine that could. And so is I there's a lot of pride in showing it to you because I know that you've seen the effort that's gone into that.
And
So
what better way to do it than doing it in public?
on live, exactly. Okay, but before we get to that, you put a post out yesterday,
Yeah.
and you have this way of talking about generosity experience that is your personal and also Neon One's brand.
Yeah.
That is it is unique, and I got to tell you, like I'm niched down into how humans use tech, and I'm really expert at that. And and then when I hear an expert like you talk about your niche, I get inspired. I don't get all the nuance of it, but you put a post out like that, and then I get a glimpse. I would love for you to just spend 30 seconds telling us what prompted that, what it, or longer, telling us about what prompted that and what you're working on these days with it.
So, for context, one of the things that almost happens every single year at this point is on social media, especially maybe some webinars, stuff like that. The Giving Tuesday haters come out. And for a long time it could have just been chalked up to, well, there's a difference in tactics. The reality though is that the data is becoming like clear that a few things are important for fundraisers to know and people who make strategic decisions on where you're putting your time and your energy. Now, if you haven't done a Giving Tuesday plan by this point, maybe it's okay to give it a year. But for next year, at the very least, here's some things I want you to know going into your planning. One, it does not cannibalize by participating end of the year giving. Giving Tuesday does not take people away. A lot of times, either uh, maybe people who are giving smaller gifts historically or mid-size gifts are the ones who are coming back because it's a very digital heavy engagement area. End of the year giving is almost always uh, people who are coming back who have historically given to you. It's a very retention heavy time of the year. Giving Tuesday has an opportunity to be either an awareness building channel, an acquisition channel, or some of the data surprisingly actually shows it is a retention channel. So there's that. Then there's the people who say, yeah, but donors tune out. Well, Neon One, if you go to our resource center or find the report that we've put out, this people like John Walsh have been spreading the word about this too. We did very detailed data, the largest analysis of email campaign data ever performed in the sector, looked at over 250 million emails sent to donors from 1,495 nonprofits that went out to over 32,000 different rows of data for subject lines.
Can
And
we
on
just give Tim Sarantonio a hand for knowing the stats? Like that alone is so
so
incredible.
sick of knowing those stats. So we'll switch over to recurring giving next year and I'll be spitting out different stuff. That's a preview of next year. Um, and what happened is that we found that donors don't tune out. There's a little bit of a dip on the click through percentages, but the unsubscribes and the opens, and yes, the caveats on open rates and yada, yada, yada. We all know that. So if we look at, engagement data, they're not tuning out. Typical donors given to 3 to 5 different nonprofits a year, and I think this is where we've kind of gone astray and why I'm excited about the broader vision of what I talked about, which when I talk about generosity experience, it's not the donor's journey, okay? It's not the donor experience, right? Because one, that's focusing in on a word that implies monetary contributions as one. That generosity is time, talent, and treasure. And so when I was, especially the click moment for me, Tim, was I was on stage at I think it was the Raise conference, not this year, but the previous year, sat next to Jenny Sager of the Lilly Institute. And she talked about we need to add trust as that fourth T. And that's when it clicked for me that if we back it up on a data standpoint, I can find data on time, volunteer hours, expenses, mileage tracked, the IRS elements on that. Talent, okay, HR data. Maybe it's activity and things like that. Maybe in-kind gifts, and pro bono services, things like that. Trackable elements, and then there's of course treasure. And I learned this at the Catholic school that I worked at, right? Our head of schools talked about time, talent, and treasure, all the time. Thing is that if you wrap all that stuff up, ultimately that translates into trust. And to kind of then tie a further bow on this, when I talk about generosity experience, and this is something that, yes, it's a term and a name that you may not have heard before, but you know what it is, folks. I'm looking at all of you, not Tim. I'm looking at all of you. You know what this is because it's that layer that's very hard to quantify, but it's ultimately, do people trust you? Do people trust you? That is the generosity experience. And every single interaction point, every single data point that you have at your disposal, every single marketing, revenue, or impact thing is all of that. Now, the design aspect is understanding that technology can accelerate this. And so when we approach this, it's that not only do I want people to be successful with their technology, regardless of Neon One's usage. If you don't use Neon One and you're using Bloomerang or Classy or Fundraise or Fundraise Up or any of these other things, if people have a good experience with you donating through that, makes my job easier because what we're doing is making it that our clients can have pleasurable experiences no matter what for their donors, their members, their event registrants, people who want to show support through volunteerism. That's our job. So if somebody's interacting with something that makes them feel good, when they interact with our forms, they're definitely going to feel good. If they interact with our communication suite or the direct mail that people are popping out using the accurate data, my mother-in-law, for instance, talked about how she was able to identify top donors using the CRM, and she simply sent them an impact report. She's a food bank in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and from that she got a several $1,000 gift solely because she found somebody who had previously been engaged before, and she didn't make an ask. And so what that meant is that if that person is turned off by bad experiences, they might just tune out for nonprofits in general. So it is in our collective best interest to design trustworthy experiences. And my point in my post, and then I'll get off my soapbox, is Giving Tuesday is a fantastic opportunity for that. It
Yep.
is not a thing that people go, this is bad for the sector. Donors like it. Donors participate. And nonprofits who participate see a lift in their end of the year giving. And they generally see other benefits, especially if they lean into the fact that it's not Gimme Tuesday
Yeah, exactly. Or Hunger Games.
or Hunger Games. It's not
Right.
about a
Yeah.
competition. That's a scarcity mindset
Yeah.
situation.
Right. Yeah. And at some point we need to unpack that scarcity mindset is a for-profit capitalistic construct.
Yeah.
And nonprofits live in a different economy. The whole economic underpinnings are different, and that is completely unexplored. We've got to get
Yeah.
we need to understand that because we're not playing by the same rules, and all of that stuff it
Ugh,
just needs more
and
exposure.
and I'm hearing the term philanthrop capitalism being thrown around, and it's just like, I mean, come on, folks. I think we might know where my perspective lies, but like at the end of the day, the outcomes are different. Phil Buchanan talked about this in Giving Done Right, where the ability for a nonprofit to assess their effectiveness is not on shareholder value and efficiencies. It's not, I made this much money, right? For companies like mine in nonprofit tech, it's going to be more, the missions and the margins in some
Yep.
ways. It's
Right.
like we have to be efficient and we need to serve nonprofits, and there's going to be a stronger push in the for-profit world to monetize the sector, and we need to be on guard against that.
Well, yeah. I mean, also there's a sustainability piece of that people don't understand. So it does need to be sustainable, which is different than profitable at an economic
Yeah.
level. Like those are like two different.
Yeah,
Anyway, all that to say, like
all that to
we've
say,
got
and
to
yeah.
grab a time and really dig into that
Oh
sometime
yeah, this
because
is not, and we
it'll
got
be
other
great.
one lovely
Yeah.
guests like Tasha who are
Right.
on
Exactly.
board,
Yeah.
so
Okay. I want to show you really quickly this thing that I made
yeah.
because I think you really you'll get it. Um, and the one of the problems I'm trying to solve is that we really don't have a role defined for what I call digital drivers, um, especially for small nonprofits. There's a lot of assumptions around that I'm not going to get into.
Sure.
But the fundamental thing we've got to start doing is learning how to help people use what they've got to solve what they can.
Yeah.
And really stop focusing on the issues that they can't solve. I call that uppercase issues are the ones they can't solve, and lowercase issues are the ones they can. The more we focus on the ones we can solve using the tech we already have, the more traction we're going to see in the ecosystem. That is completely inverse marketing than a lot, not yours, but a lot of companies are putting out there in the tech world. And
Yeah, I
so
know.
I
I'm
feel
aware.
like I know exactly. And
Nonprofit technology marketing sucks.
well, and there's a
Across the board.
whole and there's a lot to it. But the one thing I want to say is it's not your job as a product to be doing this. That is professional services that we have not been stepping up. Anyway, all that to say, what I want to do is help people use what they can to solve or use what they have to solve what they can, right?
Show the goods, man.
Okay.
Stop talking,
So
start showing.
all right, this is what I got. It starts with the idea that you would define an amount of time. Oh, I don't have this on here. Hold on. Here we go. Define an amount of time that you would be spending on this, right? So my target is for nonprofits to use between 8 and 12 hours a month.
Okay.
And the question is, what do they do with those 8 to 12 hours? And if they decide that, how do they make that accessible and understandable to the rest of the people on their team? So I've just dropped in variables here that convert to a monthly plan that just convert this to plain English, right? I'm going to resize this so we can see it
Okay.
a little
Yeah.
bit better.
Let me see,
Right.
because I have.
Yeah.
I want to
So
see what it looks like.
I'll just read this where it says, yeah, come on. Hold on. I got to unfreeze that. Okay. Let's do this bottom one here, right? So I'm going to work with volunteers to spend 30 minutes on issues related to training of donations in a Zoom. And then the note, Donna wants to know about deleting recurring donations.
Donna always wants to know about.
Donna wants to know about that, right?
Always asking about.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what this does is that it just takes every day, like really simple. Okay, this is the stuff I need to do, and it just converts it into a plan that a leader and supervisor and fundraiser can understand and see. Okay, this is what we're using this 12 hours on. I've scheduled 10.5 of it. I've got an hour and a half left, and I'm doing 25 things with it. Right. So just all I'm trying to do is simplify the line between what needs to get done in tech, which is so abstract, non-promotable, invisible, unrecognizable, into language that everyday people can understand. So we start highlighting the importance of having digital drivers on our teams.
So you showed me that. What do you want me to do now? Am I allowed to have reactions and questions and things like that given the time,
No, unfortunately, but that does mean you should come back for that. What I do want to tell you about is that on Friday, we've got a webinar called 60 Minutes to Simple, where I will be explaining all of that. You should come to that, Tim, and start heckling me in the background on the chat of that, because that would
Here's the one thing I gotta say this.
Okay,
I
yeah.
want to make sure that we avoid Taylorism in this. And this is going back to the old what Ford applied. There's Taylorism is this process for management to track the individual hours, minutes, and seconds of labor. And I think what I want to make sure that we're avoiding is that we're not using this as a punitive measure, but instead as a organizational empowerment tool that ideally also is tied to KPIs for the individual staff member to show these are the things. Because I had to fill out activity trackers when I worked at a job, and that was the flag of I'm about to get fired. And so what I want to make sure with this beautiful thing that you have there is it's an empowerment tool for the individual worker.
Absolutely. That is such a great point, because the issue we have today is exactly opposite of that, which is that leaders would be happy to supervise on what the digital voluntold that they said you're doing the tech systems, and they don't know how to empower that.
It's
because they
completely
don't
arbitrary.
understand.
It's
Exactly.
completely arbitrary.
Exactly.
So
So
you
yeah,
got to
this is
find that
not a performance
balance.
improvement plan. That is such an important point, and I'm like making a note because it absolutely
It's not a
should not
PIP.
be
You
that.
did not create a PIP tool.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
That's
Anyway,
it. That's my only feedback.
100%. And part of that is because this is what the driver is using to say to the leader, here's what I'm working on. Do you want to make any changes to it? So it invites collaboration and authenticity and transparency.
Folks, go to this thing. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Tim.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Well,
I'm the labor guy. I'm gonna talk about
tech
that.
will accelerate either side of that, right?
Exactly.
It is always such a pleasure to.
Are we going to bring? Do we have a potential for a transitionary moment between me and Tasha?
I was going to do two separate ones. I was going to, but no, that is fine. We're going to
bring her on, and
let's do it.
Kick me off.
Tasha,
oh my
welcome.
goodness! I was going to say, I thought that there was some email saying we were going to talk about what we were going to talk about beforehand, but you've probably chosen the right person to just throw in at random. Tim and Tim, nice to see you both.
Hey, welcome. So good to see you.
I'm not going to take your time. So I just thought it would be fun to have a nice baton handoff. Tasha, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Life is exciting and wild and crazy. And it's not even because it's Giving Tuesday season for me. It's just, so I'm actually hosting my own LinkedIn Live about nonprofit burnout later today. So, that's a topic.
Speaking of labor.
Yes, exactly.
I love talking about labor. I don't talk
about talking about labor. Yeah.
Okay, Tim, thank you so much for having me. I don't want to eat into Tasha's time.
Tim, thanks for coming. As always, it's never enough time, and it's always a joy. So have a great Thanksgiving. If I don't see you before then.
Yeah, have a great U.S. Thanksgiving yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because we need to make a distinction. I will say, I just finished up the Sober Friendly Spaces ebook that I think I want to put out on Giving Tuesday itself.
Oh, nice.
Love that.
And I made sure to add, and I generated the images of the mocktails using AI, because I'm like, I don't have time to hunt down all this stuff. So then I just gave it the ingredients and it made a drink. And then and I made a Canadian version. I made a Canadian because I had a 4th of July drink, and I was like, I gotta get some Canadian love here. So I was like, give me something that has Canadian maple syrup in it, as well as cocktail mocktail.
There you go. International sober curious book.
It was called The Maple Leaf. So check that out. I think I'll drop that on Giving Tuesday itself as kind of like a thank you to folks, because that's the most engaged piece that I've had on LinkedIn in a long time. So it's
nice.
I love the work you've done on sobriety and the non-alcoholic side. I think it's great.
Well, as a guy who appreciates your hat, because I had my wedding at the New Bedford Whaling Museum, but I brewed my own beer. It's a journey. It's a journey, folks. So have a good day.
Okay.
Tim Sarantonio, thank you so much for joining. Of
course. Thanks for having me.
Hey, my friend.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. It's it's a busy day. Like I said, I've got this fun webinar coming up with Megan Whitney from Feeding America this afternoon. We're talking about burnout and nonprofit, the challenges of working in the space, and how can we start bringing mindfulness into our work. It felt very apropos given the time of year.
Perfect timing. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's good. What are we talking about today?
Yeah. I wanted to tell you about the webinar I'm putting on, or the workshop I'm putting on Friday. because you and I have talked about all of these things so much, and I feel like I'm finally dialing it in. And the landing point on it, I think, is really cool because it is really focused on helping nonprofits use what they have to solve what they can, and focusing on here's the stuff you can do something about. Here are the lowercase issues that you have. So, okay, I'm going to ask you, what percent? Do you know what percent of letters in a book are uppercase?
I don't know. I'm gonna say like I don't know. Okay. So if there's 50 words in a sentence, now I'm like doing math in my head.
Oh yeah, do it.
I'm gonna say 2% is gonna be my guess.
Nicely done. Yeah. Okay, it's between 2 and 4% on average.
There you go.
Hamlet,
nice.
by the way, Hamlet is upper end of that with 5.56%, and Pride and Prejudice is a little under 2.5%. So, so that's kind of the range. King James Bible is 3.5%, by the way. So, even with all the genealogies, I know, right?
Very cool.
And I think that's similar. I think what's interesting is if you were a writer and you decide I'm going to write all the uppercase letters first, then I'm going to go back in and fill in all the letters. It's a ridiculous idea, and we all know that. But at the end, supposing a writer could do that, at the end, a reader could not read the book if they just did uppercase letters. And the reason I'm saying so much about this is that we've got a tendency to just focus on uppercase problems. What CRM should I use, right? That is an uppercase problem that's going to take a long time to solve. Yes. And, how do I migrate all of my legacy data from 1987, right? Uppercase issue. It's going to take a long time. And so what I'm trying to do is to help people see, if you write a book with all the lowercase letters, you could still read it, right? That we want to not just call lowercase issues Band-Aids. We actually want to engage those and spend time on them because we're bleeding out from 1,000 lowercase technology paper cuts in our organization. So I am working on that all the time. That's what Digital Drivers Ed is doing. And so I've got a workshop where I'm talking about that.
Love it. And I think, is tech big? Is it complicated? Absolutely. Like, I think we're all aware that it can be both of those things, but maybe there's a reframe that's required to go, for every 10 steps, one of them is a big step, but there's like 9 simple steps that are in between those two things. Right. And, I think there's something to be said in the nonprofit space for taking some action. It doesn't have to I think we all get caught up too often sometimes in these like larger scale strategy discussions, which you need to have direction. But I do think we get paralyzed by action at times. And it happens in tech too, because we're all really uncomfortable in yourself excluded maybe. And there's a few of those people, but I think most of us are just a little bit uncomfortable in the tech space. And maybe some of it comes back to the amount of thought that goes into it can also be a little crippling, where you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to reevaluate everything. And it's going to be a 2-month project to even get to the first step. Am I prepared to do anything? That's a lot to consider.
Well, and the prepared thing, that's a really good note on being prepared. And yeah, I'm naturally a very good digital driver. That's just something that I'm just naturally good at it.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm so focused on this, because I see the power of it, and I see how much of it comes down to really small things, including definition. Like, part of what happens is that we say our car doesn't work if we don't know how to turn left, right? If we're a driver that does not know how to make left-hand turns, we say that's the car not working, when actually, like, that's a driving skill. The car is very able to turn left.
Yeah.
If we're not able to, that is not a car issue, but we call it a tech problem, right? Yeah. And so even things as simple as, hey, how about if we skip the CRM for a little bit and we just focus on how we could Slack and Zoom together as a team more effectively, right?
Sure.
This is housing our digital culture. Anybody that can't use Slack and Zoom well, they're getting cut out of part of the culture that's hosted by digital tools. So, like, skip the CRM and the external all the other stuff for a minute, and let's just focus on how do we, as a group, as an organization, drive our own culture using digital tools as one of the most baseline things that we're trying to do. We want to make sure that we're including everybody and that they feel included. And if you are stuck in a meeting and you can't hit the mute button so that you can talk in that meeting, like, you're excluded.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's some fun metaphors with surrounding like digital driver's ed and everything. I mean, at least here in Canada, it probably isn't the same in the US, but insurance wise, I mean, you can start driving faster when you have an educator that you take through a course and they take you out and they actually like see you on the road and give you pointers and everything. You get your license 4 months quicker and at a lower insurance rate here in Canada. If you don't take, you can still not choose to take it. It takes you longer. You don't have as many like bells and whistles and benefits. And maybe that's just a real consideration here as well for nonprofits of all sizes, but particularly smaller nonprofits. Like, what is the opportunity cost? You know, what's that 4 months of insurance, lowered insurance and speed that's costing you by not getting the true support you need to just figure out some of your tech systems and really just how do we bring it into our culture in a way that is not only speedier, but already, because it has like bumper lanes on it, right? Like Tim Lockie, bumper lanes for digital driver's ed, right? Like, we just need you to kind of just soft landing for everybody, right? So I really love, I love the analogy of driver's ed, but I also love that there's supports out there for nonprofits in this.
Have you ever, this is such an interesting idea, Tasha. Have you ever met anybody who didn't learn to drive from someone else?
Absolutely not. Like, I mean, I'm a farm girl. I grew up in farm country and I had an old beater truck that I was allowed to drive around in the backfields with minimal supervision. But that still ended up happening, like, you know, at age 8 or 9, I still had to, like, my dad was involved. Like, it wasn't like they were like, here, you're an 8-year-old, jump in this truck. It's just, you know, didn't happen. And I definitely didn't go on the road without supervision. Until, you know, my parents weren't totally insane. They weren't going to let me go on the road without a license. Right. So no one, I don't know. Or kudos to those people who somehow came born into the world with the ability to drive. But I don't think that's most of us.
Well, I learned to drive from other people. It was just on Google and it worked okay. Right. Yeah. But, you know, and I don't mean like driving a car. I mean, driving tech on Google. I learned from Mr. Hadelberg, who lived like 4 houses down from me, who was Bozeman's driver's ed instructor. Like, I think he was almost the only one in Bozeman. And so, yeah, I think we learn from other humans. And you raise a really good point. Is in nonprofits today, is the person that you're learning to drive from, do they know how to drive? And I think one of the big issues is it works to learn from others informally if there are a lot of drivers, but in nonprofit tech, there are not a lot of drivers. Yeah. And they're probably not at your organization. And so, yeah, I think that's another good reason to consider driver's ed. So digital driver's ed. Right. Okay. This conversation you're having this week, when is it? And how do people find it?
Sure. Lots of exciting stuff happening this week. It's also National Philanthropy Day. I don't know.
It is. I did not know that.
Exciting. All right. It's a great day. So shout out to all the nonprofiteers today, because it's a big day and you deserve all the kudos. And so we're 12:30 today. I'm talking about nonprofit burnout and finding balance in your work with Megan Whitney of Feeding America. And they are instituting a, just groundbreaking program. When she was telling me about it, I was so impressed, where they've been bringing mindfulness in to support all the smaller food banks that they support. So how to, and having this online Zoom where you come and, find mindfulness together. So she's going to talk about how they began instituting that at Feeding America, how to find a minute in your day for mindfulness, and that's a totally legit place to start. And almost in the vein of digital driver's ed, it's not how big the step is. It's sometimes just making the step, right?
Yep.
It's just starting. Like, is this a solution for ever? No, but it's a step. And so I'm really excited to listen in on Megan, and then giving myself absolutely no further excuses to not find time for mindfulness in my own life, because if a minute is enough to start, then I better get going. So
Good job. Yeah.
Thanks.
I feel like it's an energy thing for me. Like that first minute is actually requires more energy
Yeah.
than after it's a habit. And so I'm glad to hear that people are pushing on, that first minute. I think it's
That
so
first minute.
important. So
Absolutely. Okay. Sounds good. Nice chatting with you, Tim.
likewise, it's so good to see you. Thanks, Tasha.
Yeah. Bye.